There we go. Yay. Okay.
Okay. So, all right. So if you want to back up one slide.
Yep. There we go.
All right. We put it forward and went reverse, and now we're ready to go forward again. So anyway, welcome everyone to an introductory webinar for the series for the high quality instructional materials for mathematics. I'm Deborah Monick. I serve as a mathematics specialist at NDE, and joining me is Marissa Prezant, and she is our language arts specialist. And we have a special guest that's helping us put this together in our presentation, which is Astrid Forsum, and she's from Student Achievement Partners. So we are very pleased to partner with her today in our presentation. So welcome. Next. So as you know, the Department of Education our mission is to lead and support and prepare all the Nebraskans for learning, earning, and living. That's our mission, and I believe this will help support our future people in what we're doing for this day. We have a commitment to equity, and that's found in many of our projects and partnerships. The equity effort that we'll be highlighting today is looking at high quality instructional materials for mathematics. Every Nebraska student deserves the opportunity to learn from high quality materials, and that prepares them for success in college, career, and civic life. The NDE and key partners, and you'll hear several about our partners, and I've just introduced one of us earlier, are committed to providing statewide leadership and to inform and support decisions made locally. It's related to your curriculum and instructional materials. It is still your decision, but we would like to give you as much support and information as possible. Next. So why focus on this instructional materials? Teachers have not had access to some standards-based materials that have been aligned to our college and career-ready standards, and those are difficult materials to find. Recently, over the last few years, publishers have been creating materials to meet these expectations, and we're planning to share some of those with you in this series. These high-quality materials should support teachers and students to learn mathematics concepts at a deeper level by doing mathematics together. To quote the president of the National Councils of Teachers of Mathematics, Matt Larson, he says, "We don't have an achievement gap, but we have an instructional gap." And we believe in implementing high quality instructional materials is one way to start narrowing that gap in our state. Next. So as part of this effort, we've been a part of a national project for high quality instructional materials with the Council of Chief State Schools officers. That group is like our commissioners of education, and we have been with about 5 states, and there's several that are now currently joining us. So that was where the project began. Our ASUs, many of our big partners, have been very active in this journey along with us. And we'll talk later more about the Nebraska Instructional Collaborative website. And this website will also share some more resources. And another partner that we've been working with is EdReports, that provides the reviews on the Nebraska materials. All right, next.
So as Deb introduced, my name is Astrid Fossum. I'm a math content specialist at Student Achievement Partners. Some people do not know us by that name. They will call us the achievethecore.org people. Our website is actually different than our given organizational name. So some of you may know us from Achieve the Core. If you've been on that website, there are free resources for all kinds of educators, teachers, ELA, and mathematics, things for professional learning and for coaches as well. And we really ground most of our work in thinking about instructional practices, formative assessment, and using that as a lever in classroom instruction, and instructional materials. So when we were asked to join the webinar today, of course, yes, we would love to and want to support states, districts, organizations that are making the switch from using materials that probably are no longer standards aligned to college and career ready standards, but to help and support and think about ways that we can really make sure that we've got the best materials in the hands of the teachers so that they can spend their time making really informed instructional decisions about sort of that day-to-day classroom instruction, because we know that that's what's good for kids that was shared earlier. So today we're going to talk about 3 questions in particular. Why are high quality instructional materials important? So we have one why question and then followed by 2 whats. What should we consider when we're adopting high quality instructional materials in mathematics? And then what's out there already? What high quality materials already exist in the field? At the end of the webinar, Deb's going to share some additional dates, additional dates in the series for when you'll find these subsequent webinars that will look at specific materials that have already been highly rated. So when we go on to the next slide, the first question there, that's on slide 7. Yeah, why are high quality instructional materials important? This is really helping us think today, like, we know that we want kids to be doing the math, right? And we want teachers to have readily available at their fingertips programs that are going to help ensure that students are doing grade level mathematics, that they're being engaging with appropriate levels of cognitive complexity, whether that's sometimes kind of low levels and sometimes building toward high. We want materials that are really thinking about attention to some of the shifts, which Deb's going to talk about in a little bit more. And because we actually aren't doing the work yet. On the next slide, TNTP, or the New Teacher Project, started and did a study from just like 1.5 years ago, September 2018. Well, I guess it's 2 years ago now, in the opportunity myth. And what they did is they looked across 5 school districts. And these were 5 very different school districts, some rural, some big, across the nation. I actually don't believe any were in Nebraska, but then there weren't any in my state either. I live in Wisconsin. There were 1,000 lessons that were observed. There were student work samples that were collected. And there was a survey where they were hearing from student voice. And really what they were doing is taking a snapshot at that time of what was happening in classrooms across the nation. And they found on the next slide some pretty actually alarming data, that there's a lot of time spent doing things that were not grade appropriate. So while the title up above says time spent on grade appropriate work, if I look at 133 hours on assignments that weren't at grade level. Now we know that there are some reasons why that happens, right? We know that there's some review. Sometimes it's like a really nice launch to get into lessons that are, but I mean, that's like 3 to 1, you know, that's pretty alarming there. And overall, students spending more than 500 hours on assignments that weren't appropriate for their grade and with instruction that didn't ask enough of them. You know, if you are a parent, if you're working in schools and you're asking your students what they did today, did you learn anything new? You know, that can be a very telling bit of information. This is not the fault of the teacher. This is not the fault of the principal. This is not necessarily the fault of anyone, other than the fact that materials have taken a long time to catch up to college and career ready standards and demands. The publishing process, the review, the iteration of all of those materials is lengthy. It's been 10 years though, since the Common Core was first adopted, since states have gone through standards revision process. And now we're seeing that there are materials that are out of date that, now we know we should be investing time in getting materials that are really hands-on and that are addressing student learning needs. So there's also a research study that's saying that high quality curriculum has been shown to really be a key lever in terms of students making academic gains. So of course there is relationship building, working with students on belonging and identity and seeing themselves as doers and learners of mathematics. But the curriculum is also another place to focus. It's a critical factor, this report is finding, in student academic success that we want and need really in the United States, as we are still trailing sort of the rest of the world. Comprehensive content-rich programs are embedded in higher performing countries as well. So they are seeing that this would be something that, we need here as well. And typically what we're finding is that materials that don't address the standards to their full depth actually tend to have problems for students later on. They might be performing okay for a while and things sort of start to crumble in their later years of studies. Most of us as teachers ourselves were taught using tricks and mnemonics that fell apart also for us at some point in time. And now we know it's time to do a little bit better. So Nebraska is really digging into thinking about how we can look at materials, what's out there, and the research is clearly showing that one of the places where the focus should be is on instructional materials. The second question Deb's going to talk through is this: what should we consider when adopting high quality instructional materials? So we know why. We know that materials aren't really meeting the demands of the standards and really aren't providing teachers and students with a fully engaging experience. And now we're going to turn to looking at the what.
Next slide, please. So our current college and career ready standards have really two sets of standards. There's content standards as far as what their students are able to do and know, and the process standards that have 4 areas of problem solving: representation, communication, and connections that go across K-12. And when we're looking into materials, we want both standards represented. We want to see the content that's expected, the grade level content that was mentioned earlier before, and then also to be able to do mathematics in those processes, we want to see that actively being encouraged happening with the students and teachers. So along with close alignment to our standards, there also should be some key instructional shifts built into the materials. And now we're going to take a little closer look to those 3 instructional shifts that are on the next slide. So there are 3 that we emphasize. Our last revisions was in 2015, and one of the first focus and shifts is focus. And to help focus our standards, we removed a lot of duplications and left fewer standards, which allow more time for you to go deeper into the content and the concepts. So allowing again for that focus and with those fewer standards. The other one is coherence. Mathematics naturally builds from concepts from prior grade levels. It's that building block, those prerequisites, but it also makes connections within grades. And we should also see the math processes that we mentioned, the 4 before, is naturally helping that coherence across grade levels. And we were talking about the quality of these materials and high tasks. When we're looking for rigor, our third shift that we should see, it's kind of got three parts to rigor. You're looking at conceptual understanding, but we're not leaving behind the procedural skills and fluency that maybe is a little more well known for mathematics and a foundation in what we would say that arithmetic foundation. But then we also would really like to see application. Are we able to do real world problems and non-routine and in some kind of a context? And so that's another level of rigor that is expected. So those are three of the instructional shifts that as you look at materials, yes, you're going to have the content and some of the things, but look deeper into the tasks, the routines, and how they work with. Ideally, we'd like to create a math community where high expectations are set for every student and that support teachers and their classmates to take risks to learn through failures and through that productive struggle. And I think with the use of the high quality instructional materials that provides the focus, the coherence, and has rigor with meaningful tasks, I think we can put that together and make it a very good math classroom for our students. Next, we've got some resources and some tools, and Marissa's going to share with us about our collaborative website that we have.
All right. So just real quickly, we do have, as part of our instructional materials collaborative work that's been going on for about the last 3 years, we have built out an entire website which just contains tons of resources, tools to get you started if you're with a district that's considering a new adoption and you're just kind of in that tooling around for a possible new selection phase. We just have tools that address kind of all stages of that process. So one of the key features of this website is that you can access reviews to all of the materials. If you're familiar with EdReports is a national nonprofit. Really the first and almost only of its kind that actually reviews curricula kind of against some of those instructional shifts that Deb was talking about. And so our Nebraska Instructional Materials Collaborative site actually links you to those EdReports reviews. One of my favorite features of the website too is our instructional materials map. And as long as I'm still screen sharing, I'm just going to quickly share. Astrid, will you give me a thumbs up if you can see? Okay, perfect. So you'll see it's broken out by ELA, math, and science. You've got the reviews there. ELA is a little bit different because they've just begun reviewing some of those foundational skills programs like the reading programs. Here we've got special resources just for math. We've got some science, similar for science here. And then we've got just in this Nebraska resources tab, we have just a lot of different things. As we embarked upon this work, we were really intentional about really distinguishing, well, what are materials, what is curriculum, what is a standard, how do all those things interplay? And so you can find that information here. We always put the events up, whatever is going on, such as today's introductory webinar. And then I love this instructional materials map. You can actually search by either material or you can search by district, and it kind of shows you what different areas across the state have in place. And this is kind of a new feature. We're actually in the process of updating it just according to our last round of data collection. So I would highly encourage you, if you just, whatever you want to learn about this work, it's probably here. So I would just encourage you to explore if you haven't already. We also have, so I mentioned that on our Instructional Materials Collaborative website that we link to the EdReports, there are some other review tools. EdReports has its whole gateway system, 3 gateways and a color coding rating system. There is another IMET tool out there. Astrid would probably be able to speak more knowledgeably about it, but that is there for you as well as you move through the process. This is just a little screenshot capture of the website that I just showed you. I would encourage you to bookmark that as well. I know I have it bookmarked. I refer to it fairly often, almost daily. We do have just right out front there, we were also very careful to articulate our purpose for this collaborative work, and that's to highlight high quality instructional materials. As Deb was saying, we're not recommending particular materials. Those are local decisions, but we're certainly there to support you in the process wherever you're at in that, and just making sure that all kids have access to materials that are going to help them achieve the standards. So I'll just do a quick little walkthrough of what you'll see when you get into the reviews area of the website. So EdReports has a pretty, well, I mentioned the gateway system. So they have simplified it. There's a lot of indicators within those 3 gateways and within those criteria of alignment and usability and whatnot. But they actually make it kind of simple with color coding. So they've got a green, yellow, red. So green is meeting expectations. A yellow rated material would be partially meets expectations, and then the red would be does not meet expectations. And of course, by expectations, we mean in general terms, does it align to standards? So EdReports bases their reviews on alignment to the Common Core state standards, which sometimes people are a little questioning of that, but actually both of our math and ELA standards in Nebraska are pretty aligned to Common Core in terms of content and rigor. So you can look at rubric and evidence guides. In fact, these reports will give you all the information you want to know about a given program. So for example, if a program is rated yellow, it will tell you exactly where maybe some of those misalignments were, and you can read a lot about it. In fact, when I was in the classroom, I'm in my 3rd year being out of the classroom, but when I was in the classroom, one of the first ways that I used EdReports was to read about the materials that I was currently using that I had not done. And it was just very enlightening, very, very eye-opening to see what the reviewers had to say about that program.
Actually, would you mind, would you just go back one more?
Sure.
So I would add that with EdReports, the people that are doing the reviews have been through a training with them on their rubric, and they are educators. So educators from across all 50 states, math, ELA, and they also do science reviews, and they are very comprehensive. You'll notice, like Marissa was saying with the green, yellow, red, in that alignment summary there, you'll also notice the bold language of focus and coherence, and then rigor and mathematical practice. And so those shifts that Deb was sharing earlier of focus, coherence, and rigor, those are kind of like the North Star, or like the common thread between all of this. You have a wonderful materials site in Nebraska that's really helping inform and helping you find out, like, oh, what are some things that we could be looking at if we're thinking about adoption, or how are the materials that we currently have, how do they fare? And the criteria is consistent. It isn't that I'm now comparing apples and oranges. The Nebraska standards are saying, let's work on focus, coherence, and rigor. EdReports is also reporting out on focus, coherence, and rigor. And the other tool that I'm going to share has those exact same 3 guiding principles. And so on the next slide, you'll see there's an introduction to Instructional Materials Evaluation Tool. We work with a lot of districts, and very often when we're working with districts or states that are coming up with their list, it just depends on local or state control. Their first step is, let's see how this does on EdReports. Okay, so now that's been through their tool. Well, now what are we going to use to see if that works for us? And so the one that we have been using at Student Achievement Partners and developed, it's on the achievethecore.org site, is what I'll call the IMET, or Instructional Materials Evaluation Tool. We have it in ELA, we have it in mathematics, but you're gonna see the same language there. I see focus twice, I see coherence, I see rigor. It isn't a static form. It looks like it is, but I was just working with a district that decided to create an entirely new alignment criteria because they have a very big initiative, rightfully so, on culturally responsive teaching and on virtual actually aspects. So they added some additional alignment criteria to theirs. So you don't have to take any of these things at like 100%, but know that they're a guide, so you don't actually have to start at 0. Right? And that focus and coherence and rigor are really there in some of the language and the criteria and the evidence guides and EdReports. Similarly in the IMET tool. So there is a kind of a gateway system in the IMET. You've got the non-negotiables. If you don't meet if the program doesn't meet the non-negotiables, if it isn't the focused, like if it isn't the right math, we're not going to keep looking at it. If it doesn't connect from grade to grade, and I have looked at programs where like there might be a really significant shift between 2nd and 3rd grade, maybe because they have different authorship teams, or between 5th and 6th. You know, that's kind of a hiccup there. Those are going to be the non-negotiables. And then alignment criteria, further alignment to standards and as criteria for high quality are going to be, is this measuring concepts, procedures, and applications or word problems? How are we addressing, how is the program addressing the standards for mathematical practice? And then how are we dealing with special populations? Students with learning disabilities, our English learners, all kinds of things, gifted students that are also components that we need to look at when we're looking at programs. So you can use this tool, you can pull it apart, but it is another thing to consider if you are thinking about how might we measure and how are we going to begin this process if we're starting to think about adoption. There is a little breakdown furthermore on the next slide, which just sort of shows what it looks like. Of course, it's messy because there are little boxes to fill in and places to take notes for evidence. I tend to work in Google Docs when I'm doing these because I write very largely and sloppily, so it doesn't work for me that way. But it is subject specific, it's grade specific. We've had groups that do a 6th through 8th grade review, and they have a team working on 6th grade for a few programs, 7th grade for a few programs, 8th grade for a few programs. And then the whole group kind of comes together and calibrates on that. There are also full training materials on achievethecore.org that walk through and go through every part of the IMET process. And I'm happy to talk about that later on with anyone else too. Evaluation summary at the end, but really what this tool is meant to do is help inform your decisions about purchasing, really thinking about like, do we need something new? How would something new be measured? And really help build understanding of what aligned materials look like. I have seen parts of the IMET lifted and directly entered into RFPs, for example. So it's like, it gives you kind of a nice base for somewhere to begin in conjunction with Nebraska standards, in conjunction with what EdReports is offering as well. So we wanted to just make sure you were aware of that tool.
Yep. So our final question is another what. So you might be wondering, so what high quality materials already exist in the field? And as we've been talking about, to signal that quality, we look for those materials that are aligned to our college and career standards and that support the key instructional shifts. So this is why we put the webinar series together, and it's just a beginning to give you more information about those programs. So earlier, Marissa talked about how they were color-coded, and so on the next slide, you're going to find some of the programs that have all green in their reviews, and these are the first elementary level that we begin with to share more with this upcoming week. So we will be hearing from Bridges in Mathematics and Zern, EnVision 2020, and Eureka Math. And if you notice right now also, they're geared more to elementary, like I mentioned, K5 to K8. And these have been highly rated for their alignment to standards, and you will see that when you would go to the collaborative site, the website. And what we will do is in the future also add to this as programs are being reviewed and put together. But keep in mind, all the local districts still have choice, and these reviews are just to help you look at, and even this is not an exhausted list. Just recently they reviewed some more, and so I know Marissa and I both have been contacted for some more green in each of our areas, so we will keep adding to our webinars and ask them to join us. So you will see the dates. Hopefully you've registered on our website. You can go to the events and register for each of these. We will also post, if you noticed, I think you saw webinars there, archived webinars in one of the places that Marissa showed. And so when this series is completely done, we will be posting these recordings for you as well. So these are just materials. They will be able to talk to you same time. Basically on a Zoom meeting like today and share their materials with you. So those are the upcoming for this particular series. So in the next slide, I just want to have, there's a nice little quote that appears. And if you think about it, we want to ensure that all students, no matter where their zip code or time zone for Nebraska, family income or background, get what they need to be successful, and must be far more thoughtful in approach for the curriculum, because curriculum does matter. It's actually content that children learn in that school, and so this is just our support system trying to help you make those better decisions for your students. So on the final slide, I just want to thank everyone today for your time and interest in the webinars, and we hope the series will be a valuable resource as you make a very important decision on what materials you'll be selecting to use with your students in your districts. And I want to thank you for your continued effort to improve math education in our state. So those are our pieces that we would like to share. And so I want to thank Astra and Marissa today, and we will post this, and hopefully you'll be able to have that available and help your schools through that process. So thank you very much.
And Deb, it looks like there's a question in the chat box about a Zoom link for Friday, but it must be actually for Monday, since there is no session on Friday, that the Eureka link is the Monday link.
Correct. Whoops. Yes, correct. They move from Friday to Monday, but the link should still hold. Is that correct, Marissa? Yes.
Yep,
So
that's correct.
Yes.
Are there any additional questions before we wrap things up today? You can either drop those in the chat or just do a quick unmute.
Hey Marissa, this is Corey. I just want to mention that if you're a district curriculum contact, please submit your data around the instructional materials that you're using. We're hoping to close that in that data collection by Friday. It's via the NDE portal in the data collections tabs. And if you have questions, just shoot me an email and we'll get you set up.
Good reminder. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Astrid. All of us are available for questions if you think of anything after the fact. And hopefully you've registered for our upcoming webinars this week and next. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.